The Blue White Football and Recruiting Podcast is back. Blue White Illustrated, bwi.rivals.com. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel, and it is Whiteout week, folks. We have a lot to cover in this edition of the Recruiting Podcast. We will get into Ryan's trip to Ohio to see Drew Allar, and the quarterback looked very good. Obviously, a 4-star now. Ryan has a lot more info from him, and also news on the fact that Ohio State offered him and what his thoughts are on that. So we'll dive into that. A new offer for a class of 2023 recruit coming out of the Ball State game, and we'll close things out with the Whiteout week. A look at the visitor list, a look at what the impact of that game against Auburn, 7:30 p.m. ABC will televise it from Beaver Stadium, which of course we're expecting to be sold out. So Ryan, let's get going here. How are you doing on this Whiteout week in the middle of September as Penn State sits at 2-0 and gets ready for both its biggest game of the non-conference slate and also its biggest recruiting crowd of the year so far?
Yeah, man. Well, my kid's homesick, so the worst timing for that as far as trying to prepare a list here. So apologies if you hear a screaming 1-year-old upstairs at some point over the next 30 minutes or so. But as far as, work-wise and getting a list together, we're in pretty good shape here. Right now, we're getting over 50, 60 kids so far confirmed, and that list is going to grow, man. It's going to get we know it'll be over 100, and I think as far as like true, scholarship talent, guys that Penn State is going to pursue hard, it should. I think we could see easily another dozen or so. I mean, the list I have now is pretty much the top of the top as far as talent wise, but we'll see. We'll see guys add to it. For example, I just added James Hurd Jr., defensive end out of St. Joseph's Prep late last night, and we'll probably see one or two kids confirm every day up until then. So I would think 120 or so, maybe 100, and probably more than that, maybe even 130, 140 total, and then probably about half of that list will be guys who are scholarship talent, already have an offer, committed, whatever it is. But this is always the big event, man. This is aside from the Lash Bash and maybe a monster junior day. This is what Penn State what's the best word? This is what Penn State loves to show their recruits, man. This is everything.
Well, bwi.rivals.com/subscribe. If you're not a Lions Den premium subscriber, you can sign up today, get all of the list and more insight from Ryan, Nate, David Eckert, myself, T. Frank, and the rest of the gang at Blue White Illustrated. All right, let's start things off with where you were last Friday. You went out to Ohio to check in with Drew Allar, who had a really good game, another really good game. All he does is just put up monster numbers. He did it again, and obviously, some of the talk last week was not as much about those numbers, but more about the fact that Ohio State is now entered his recruitment, and it doesn't really seem like it matters. But let's just start first with that factor of it all, and then just from the general standpoint of seeing him in person, what were your main takeaways as we roll some of his tape? If you're watching us, you can see the highlights as Ryan talks, youtube.com/Blue White Illustrated.
Yeah, so going out there, the Ohio State offer is the big reason why I went out there. We were talking last week. I don't know, it was maybe Wednesday, Thursday, and you could tell he wanted nothing to do with it. Ohio State came and watched him the week prior. Corey Davis, I believe their quarterback coach, was who went out there. And once it got out there, the Ohio State offered. He just went kind of not silent. I mean, he talked to us off the record about it, but didn't really want to go on the record. So we started talking Thursday night about maybe me coming out there. And the big reason, it wasn't that he was trying to hide anything. He just wanted to focus on this game. Stowe Monroe Falls was ranked 3rd in the Northeast Ohio poll, and Medina was ranked number 2. So this was a monster game for them. And as you can see with some of the highlights I put together here, he had a great game, 29-48. 523 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He did have a silly interception that he told me was maybe the worst throw of his career. He's just trying to do too much, tried to throw it across the field, to throw it out of bounds, and just he lobbed it up way too high. So listen, actually, one other thing I'll add with this is I counted 8 drops in this game. So when you look at 29-48, you're thinking, oh man, you want to see that percentage a lot higher. Well, what I learned is he has good receivers, but they dropped quite a few balls for him too. So this could have been a 600-yard performance. Stowe Monroe Falls really kept him contained as far as the rushing game. I think he had maybe 5 yards rushing, and that's not what we saw in previous games. He had I think 2 games where he was a little over, a little under 100 yards. So, but they throw the ball a lot, man. That's one thing I learned about this offense. 48 attempts. And really, he had 2 sacks too, so they tried to throw it 50 times. And they also threw it with like 20 seconds left in the game, which was interesting. He actually should have had a 6 touchdown. They called the kid out at the 1 yard line, and I was right there. I was trying to take photos at the time, thinking they weren't going to throw it, and I thought the kid scored. But anyway, let's get to the Ohio State topic. That's what I think everybody really wants to talk about. And I did a big interview with Drew yesterday or over the weekend. We posted a story on Monday. I think if you're watching this podcast, you probably already have read that already. And look, he's just adamant that there's really not much to see here. He appreciate Ohio State offering. Obviously, he did admittedly grow up an Ohio State fan, and he took their call and listened to them offering. But that's it. That's where he plans to end this. I'm sure Ohio State will keep chipping away as they should. That's what all schools do. That's what Penn State does elsewhere. And all of these programs are going to keep going after the best talent. But everything that he's told me, and maybe even not that Drew's word doesn't matter, but even his family too, I'll stress that, everything that they stressed was that this recruitment is done. And Mike Yurcich is the major reason why. And we already kind of knew that before all this happened, but I mean, Yurcich was the guy who really initiated this in Texas. He was arguably the top coach at the top program to really buy into Drew Allar before many others. And that of course, is why he was at Texas last year. And then with the coaching change, he gets over to Penn State and decides to offer. So right now, the only way I see Drew Allar potentially not signing with Penn State is if Mike Yurcich were to not be on this staff very early in December, because he's going to be an early enrollee. And he's going to have to sign on December 15th. So unless Yurcich gets a head coaching job very early in this cycle, that's the only way I could see Drew Allar not signing. And even then, I think he'll be so far into it that it would probably be more like 50-50, not that he would just follow Yurcich or go to Ohio State or whatever. So that's just the only way I envision him not being here, is if somehow Yurcich were to leave and he decided to look around. But right now, man, I'd give it like a 5-10% chance. I think it's incredibly low that he doesn't sign with Penn State.
Yeah, I might even be a little bit lower than that. Just reading his quotes, watching the things that he has said over the last handful of months, it's become pretty clear that Penn State's a school for him, and nobody is going to change that fact at Ohio State or anywhere else. Now, you make a fair point about Yurcich leaving. What could that change things? But that's always going to be the case, right? That's always something that's going to come up, whether you are a 4-star quarterback like Drew Allar is, or you are a big-time running back or a big-time defensive lineman. If your defensive coordinator leaves, or it's always going to be in play. So I think the main takeaway for me, Ryan, before we move on to Ball State and what happened there from a recruiting impact, is just that, I think Penn State fans were pretty well informed by you ahead of time that this Ohio State offer wasn't probably going to change much for Drew Allar if it came. But now I can rest assured that, he is on the record, his family's on the record, and it's exactly what most people thought, which is it's not going to change anything for him.
Yep. Yeah, don't have much to add other than that, man. I think he's a Nittany line through and through, and I think his family's. They see the quarterback room there. The transfer portal will, it'll eventually, a few guys will leave, and that's why they're pursuing Drew. They know that they probably are going to keep those 4 or 5 guys there over the next year or two. So that's why because if you look at that room now, there's no reason to add another guy. Well, the transfer portal is a big reason why. But they see the opportunity with Penn State, and they also just appreciate the fact that Penn State bought into him very early in the process. Mike Yurcich. This has been Yurcich's guy from the start. They appreciate that. They built an awesome relationship, and there's no reason to change it up. At least I don't expect it to change. Put it that way.
No doubt about it. Well, Drew Allar, one of Penn State's 2 class of 2022 quarterback commits, Bo Prabula, obviously the other one, also putting up big numbers at Central York during his senior high school season, and it'll be fascinating to watch these two in the future compete to be Penn State's quarterback. This is the Blue White Illustrated Penn State football and recruiting podcast. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. If you didn't read that Drew Allar interview or any of the other content leading up to Auburn, check us out, bwi.rivals.com. If you already are a subscriber, thank you. As you can see on our homepage, which I'll show you if you're watching on YouTube here in a sec, plenty of stuff up today, from the NFL updates to news on, again, Drew Allar, some final thoughts from Ball State. We got you covered, bwi.rivals.com. recruitment.com. Ryan, it was not a huge visitor list on Saturday, as expected for Penn State, Ball State. Mostly commits. One guy I was really impressed. Tyrese Mills and JB Nelson are two guys I had not seen in person before, and they looked apart. That was one thing that I had. It was kind of a takeaway for me, was just how much those two guys looked the part in person. I mean, you see it on film, of course, but they're filled out pretty well. So I think that was one takeaway. But, it was mostly a group of commits that came, not all of them, but, Caden Saunders was on hand. Those two Lackawanna prospects were there. Drew Shelton showed up. He's a big boy, just as we always knew. So a good opportunity for Penn State to kind of test run some things, I would assume. Obviously, they've been doing this for a long time, but it's been a year since they had any recruits on campus, let alone the number they'll have this week during the Whiteout game. So one offer does come out of this. It goes to Joey Schlaffer. Did I get that right? Is that right?
Schlaffer. Yep, like
Beautiful.
laughter. Schlaffer.
Yes,
yep.
Got it. Ty Howe watched him play on Friday, and he comes to State College on Saturday, comes in for an unofficial visit, to see Penn State Ball State, leaves with an offer, the brother of Michael Mennett. Obviously, the connection there is going to make a lot of people think Penn State could be the favorite to land him. So let's learn a little bit more about him. And then any other thoughts you had from being down on field level as those guys took in warm-ups before kickoff.
Well, yeah. I mean, I interviewed Joey last week, and he made it clear that if Penn State offered, and this was 2 days before they did, that this would mean more. And the big thing for him was that not only was he, the little kid watching Penn State over the last couple of years, watching his brother progress, but he really liked the fact, his whole family really likes the fact that Michael became the best, not just the best player, but the best person he could potentially be. I mean, they feel like that staff maximized every drop of what he could potentially be. And, he's getting an opportunity in the NFL. I believe I'm not sure if he's on a practice squad right now. I know the Cardinals dropped him, but he's going to get more opportunities, I'm sure, at some point. So they really like the fact that, Michael not only went there and played, but he succeeded and also was a two-time team captain. So that was big with Joey and really the entire family. I did get stats from his game that Ty Howe was at. He had, I believe it was 5 or 6 receptions for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. The film's not out yet. I'd like to see it then. But with Ty going out to that, Penn State doesn't really, if Penn State hasn't offered a player, they don't really go see guys unless they know, like, they're pretty confident in offering.
They're in the ballpark, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're 90% there. So that's kind of why once we learned that Ty was going there and that he was coming back up for the game Saturday. That's kind of why myself and other colleagues were feeling pretty good that this kid was going to get an offer, and he should. I think Joey would have had an offer a long time ago if he's not connected to Penn State, and that they take their time with that because they know that if they extend this offer, they can't really take it back or look elsewhere. Right. It's a lot easier to do that with a kid from Miami. It's a lot more difficult to do with this family. So I think there's a very good chance that Joey may end up here. Not too early to put in any picks or anything like that, but he'll be somebody we watch closely. I'm already set to go see him play Governor Mifflin and Nick Singleton. I believe it's in 3-4 weeks from now. So yes. Just a couple other takeaways, though, from the visitor list as a whole. There were 6 committed players. You mentioned a couple of them. Caden Saunders also came. Ken Talley. It was a good group, Drew Shelton and the Lackawanna guys. I think that was pretty solid for the Ball State game, knowing that like 20 of them are all going to be here this upcoming weekend, and we'll hit on that in a second. The most notable players who visited last week were quarterback Cam Edge. Leading into the visit, Cam was kind of 50-50, and then he confirmed Saturday morning that he was making the trip. 15 offers so far for Cam, 6'1", 205 from Smyrna, Delaware. A couple schools, Cincinnati, LSU, Oregon, let me think, West Virginia, Wisconsin. There are a couple solid programs that are on him hard. He camped with the staff this summer, and from what I understand, they were happy with how he performed. He may be Penn State's most realistic quarterback target in 2023 right now. There's not one guy who is really – obviously they want Dante Moore. Dante Moore is the top guy. I don't know if he's the most realistic, though. Cam Edge kind of fits that mold right now. Let's see how things develop, of course. 2 other 2023 guys, Renell Nuka and Keon Wright, both from Northeast High School. Both have offers, close connections with Deion Barnes. They've been up a lot of times. Penn State's still kind of watching their film before I get the impression that, whether they're going to go all out on those guys or not. But they've been here enough now, and like I said, they have those ties that I expect to see them regularly. I think they're actually going to be back again this weekend too. And then a couple of guys for 2024 to keep an eye on that came up this weekend. Brad Birch, quarterback from Gateway High School, 6 foot 190. He has an early offer from Oregon. Hasn't picked up too many offers yet. I'm curious to see how his season is going in Gateway. I haven't followed him too closely yet, but it was good to get him back up here. Rennell Davis is a safety from Roman Catholic. I think 6'1", 175, I believe, is his size. He has an early offer from West Virginia. He was up for the 7-on-7 camp earlier this year. Penn State got an eye on him. I think he's going to be a guy to watch. Again, these are all 2024 guys. But the main 2024 player that came up was Quentin Martin, the athlete out of Bell Vernon. I still don't know what position he's going to play. He doesn't really even know where he's going to play because he does everything from linebacker to corner to safety, wide receiver, running back. I wouldn't be surprised if he's throwing it at some point. 6'3", 180. I mean, he's pretty big for a running back. I would be surprised, or I wouldn't be surprised if some teams maybe are a little more interested in him as a wide receiver. Right now, I would probably call him a running back for Penn State, but they made it clear, or Quentin made it clear, and kind of sources I talked to, that they're still trying to figure him out, but they know they definitely want him. I think he's going to be the best player in Pennsylvania for his class. Penn State, Maryland, I think Pitt, Rutgers, Vatech, and West Virginia are his 6 offers so far. So really good player. And Penn State's actually going to get him back on campus too this upcoming weekend. So I believe those are his first 2 visits. I don't think he really went anywhere this summer. And I know this past weekend was his first trip to Penn State.
Yeah, so obviously, again, we had talked about it on last week's show. You can find all of our podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get audio, you'll find us. And we talked about it on last week's show. But, if guys had a choice, and in some cases you do get players who came for the Ball State game and are coming back 7 days later for Auburn. But in a lot of cases, if it was one or the other, guys are going to wait for the Whiteout game because that's the experience everybody wants to be a part of. That's the big game of the weekend for a lot of Penn State targets, including underclassmen. So, it was a good group. It was nice, I think, for Penn State, again, to have that chance to get guys back on campus, even though it wasn't a huge number and it won't be as big as this week, just to get that feel going again and get things organized and ready to go because obviously you have to be on your game when hundreds of recruits are coming to campus as they are this week. So, all right, let's move into
let me add one thing real quick, Greg. Yeah. It was about 60 players total. Now the majority of them are guys who are potential walk-ons or friends of friends, but it was good to get. And that 60 is a little bigger than what we've seen in previous years for that first game. And I will add that yes, Penn State's been doing this for a while, but they've had a lot of turnover in their recruiting staff since 2019. So it was good for them to get a what I would consider a bigger number than normal for a season opener and just get dry run, like you called it, because when this upcoming weekend, everything has to go perfect. There can't be any mistakes. You can't forget a ticket for a friend of a friend. You can't spell the name wrong on the player tag, man. All of that stuff really matters. I talked to 1 or 2 people in the past who were upset at little things like that, and it's usually during the biggest weekends like this because you're seeing 150. You're seeing 120 to 150 prospects, and then think about the friends they bring, the girlfriends, family, grandma. I mean, it is a 500-person list, really. An operation is what you can kind of call it. So it was good for this staff. And, a lot of the main people from Hazel to Andy Frank, Kenny Sanders is back now, but there's a lot of people underneath. Dan Kabbalah, I forgot to mention that, but a lot of people underneath who are kind of new, and that was their first experience with a game day operation.
Well, it seemed to go smoothly. Obviously, again, the one offer does go out, and they put things together, not just for that home game, but obviously, again, to get ready for next week as well. So good stuff there. This is the Blue White Illustrated Penn State Football and Recruiting Podcast. We are putting the finishing touches on our latest magazine, which will hit newsstands later this week. If you're already a subscriber, keep an eye out in your mailbox for that. Plenty of good content in there as we get through the first 2 weeks of the regular season in college football and get ready for Auburn. If you're not a subscriber, but you're interested to learn more or you want to sign up, covenpub.com/BWI-preview will get you in that ballpark. You can also go to bluewhiteonline.com or call customer service 814-234-1177 Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Ryan, We've talked now for about half the show about everything but whiteout recruiting, and now we're going to dive into that list. Obviously, as you've mentioned a couple of times now, it's a massive group. A lot of really good players, a few official visitors, not as many as you would see in normal years for the whiteout game because of two things. Number one, the class of 2022 is so big already, so you don't have that large number of uncommitted guys, but then you also had many players, including most of the commits, take their official visits in the summer when they were able to do that now under NCAA rules. So, you have a few here that are coming. Obviously, Penn State looking to fill maybe a couple of spots here in this class of 2022. Let's start there before we get into the underclassmen who are going to be here and make up a majority of this list.
So right now there are 3 official visits that I feel comfortable talking about as far as I feel like they're definitely going to happen. And one of them is Jordan Allen, the quarterback commit for Penn State out of Lafayette, Louisiana. He wasn't able to make it up this summer. He actually still hasn't been to Penn State. He had an official visit scheduled. He had to cancel it. There just a family event he had to attend. And so this will be his first opportunity to check everything out. That should be a pretty fun opportunity, when you're already committed to Penn State and your first experience is the whiteout. So that should go pretty well. I would expect everything to be perfect there. He'll be up. I believe he plays Friday night, so he'll be up Saturday morning. And with the 48-hour rule, he can pretty much stay to the end on Sunday. And then the two other players who we know are pretty much locked in. Wide receiver Omari Evans, he's 6 foot 170 from Killeen, Texas, and then linebacker Jayshawn Barham, 6'3", 230 from St. Francis. Barham is incredibly quiet, so he is very difficult to read. I think even Penn State sources will tell me, this is someone who's not very open with them either. Just not that he doesn't communicate with Penn State, he doesn't communicate really with anyone. He's just very low key as far as recruiting. So we know Maryland's in it. We know South Carolina. We know Florida. He visited Maryland, South Carolina, and Penn State in the summer. All were unofficial visits, I believe. And Florida will probably get an official visit at some point this season. I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina did too. Aside from that, man, it is a very difficult recruitment to read. I think Penn State is maybe the favorite. I know some people in Nash, they feel good, but they're hesitant to really believe they're the true favorite when he's a quiet kid, hard to read, as I've said. So this visit will go a long way. His family will be coming up with him for the first time. I believe his previous trips, even back when he was a freshman at DeMatha, I believe that was as a teen. And when he came this summer, I know his mom wasn't able to make it. So this should be his first opportunity to really show Barham and his entire family everything that Penn State has to offer. So I would like to tell you that I am in depth on this one, and I know where the guy's going, but I don't. And I don't think really any reporters out there can tell you that they have a real rock solid feel for what Jayshawn Barham is thinking. Wide receiver Omari Evans, I have a little bit of better feel for this one. Penn State, Rutgers, Vanderbilt, they feel like his top schools right now to me. But Baylor, Houston, Arkansas, Indiana, they're still in the mix with the Texas Speedster. I mean, he runs a 4.3 or so 40, and he came up for an unofficial visit at the very end of June. I believe it was the last day before the dead period, and just killed his workout. And ever since then, Penn State has really pushed hard. Now, make no mistake, Andre Green is still very much their top wide receiver target, and Darius Clemens is in that mix too. But to me, Evans feels like the most realistic out of that group. Now, we are keeping an eye on Andre Green for an official visit. It's still kind of too early to tell if he's going to make it or not. I know Penn State would love to get him here. So check back later in the week, and maybe I'll have a little better feel for that. I will say just one other thing with officials. There are maybe 2 or 3 committed guys, the other schools, who are looking into visiting. Right now, as far as publicly put on a podcast, it's not right to put those names out there. We'll see if those guys do end up making it. And if they do, of course, that's something we'll share in our premium message boards. But I wouldn't be surprised if the official visit list is 5 or 6 total. And right now, it feels like 3 guys are locked in.
bwi.rivals.com/subscribe if you're not a part of the Lion's Den. Join us there for all the latest recruiting scoop on the way and before, during, and after Penn State's whiteout date with Auburn. So we talk about the 2022 group here. Obviously, it's good to get some guys on campus that are uncommitted and put your best foot forward during your biggest game week, but that's not the only class that Penn State will be focusing on during this Auburn weekend. The class of 2023, class of 2024 are going to be well represented here as well. They'll actually make up the majority of this visitor list. And when you mention that it's like a 500 or 600 person traveling party, you get a lot of these underclassmen who definitely, I mean, not that class of 2022 guys and upperclassmen do not want to have their families with them, but in some cases they've seen it before, whether it was I guess 2019. So it may be that this year's not particularly the best time for me to be
well,
making this
a handful
point,
of these
but
guys have been here before, though. Like Caden Saunders has been here a
right.
bunch of times, but there's a bunch of others we could roll through the list. But for the most part, your point holds true.
Yeah, so you don't, but with this underclassmen group, if grandma wants to come because grandma wants to see what the Penn State campus is like, you better find grandma a ticket. So that's where you're going to see a lot of the majority of your visitors. So let's dive into that part of this list, Ryan. Penn State, at this point in time, one class of 2023 commit, Alex Birchmeyer, who just posted his first 3 games worth of film. I'll be interested to watch that a little bit later on. A 4-star offensive lineman from Broad Run, Virginia, but when you look at this underclassmen group coming, who stands out to you?
Yeah. So right now I've got about 30. I got exactly 30 scholarship prospects confirmed or at least expected to attend, as of Tuesday morning for 2023 and 2024, which is really good. I think that number will probably be closer to 40 when it's all said and done, but I feel like we have probably about 3/4 of those top scholarship underclassmen. I guess 2023 is not underclassmen now; they're juniors. But from that, the classes that aren't this year, at least we'll say that are expected to be here. So let's roll just through a couple of names here real quick. There's a couple pretty good offensive line prospects I want to hit on. Luke Montgomery, 6'5", 260, out of Findlay, Ohio. He's, I believe, Penn State's top offensive tackle prospect in this class. Birchmeyer, of course, will be a guard. He's what I consider their top interior prospect. But him and Birchmeyer are pretty much 1A, 1B as far as overall offensive linemen. You got to get these guys. This will be Luke's 3rd visit to Penn State, and the first of those visits was actually before the dead period ended. He came up last October to watch the Ohio State game on campus with a bunch of committed guys. Let's see, it was Caden Saunders, Drew Shelton, Ken Talley, and I believe Landon Tangwall was part of that group as well. And that was his first Penn State experience. Penn State was really the first major school to offer him, I believe. So that gave them a good head start on everything, and I think it will help. Although it will not be easy to land Luke Montgomery. His top schools right now are, listen to this list: Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, or I skipped Georgia. Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Stanford. That's a heck of a list right there. So he's not going to be an easy land. Obviously, with him being an Ohio prospect, you got to think Ohio State's going to be very much in the mix there. So let's see what happens. This will be his first time coming to a game at Penn State, and actually his little brother Ryan, 2025 quarterback prospect, he also holds an offer already. So that's something to watch down the road. Just a couple other guys we'll roll through. I'll try and be a little quicker on them. Kobe Keenum, he grew up an Auburn fan, 6'4", 285, from Florence, Alabama. Auburn hasn't offered him yet, but they're watching him closely, and I think if Auburn does offer, he'll be someone to watch. But right now, I know he has a very good relationship with Alex Birchmeyer, and I think Penn State might be the team to beat with him. So this visit will go a long way. Matthias Barnwell, 6'6", 270, out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. We got some new highlights here. Good work here, Greg. These are, I believe, from his game 2 weeks ago or so. Man, at 6'6", 270, I'm curious to see what Penn State and really all of these schools decide to do. To me, he's showing signs of being an offensive tackle. But, man, when you watch some of these highlights here, he can really move. He can catch it. So those are all, positives, I guess you could say. But man, that athleticism at tackle, it makes a lot of sense. We know he visited Kentucky, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech this summer. 2 more guys real quick. Lamont Payne, Chartiers Valley. I discussed him a lot last week. I have a future cast in for him. I almost said crystal ball there. I have a future cast in for him, and I think he's someone to potentially watch for a commitment. It might not be this week, but every time he's on campus, man, he's somebody I'm going to be watching. And then Tamir Robinson, of course, the top player in Pennsylvania, linebacker prospect from Brashear. He appears to be playing a bit more linebacker this year compared to previous years, but man, he still plays all over the place for them. We know he went to Pitt for the season opener, Ohio State last week for the game against Oregon, and visits to Michigan and Clemson are in the works. So a couple guys to keep an eye on, Ben, but this list is deep, from Sadir Mitchell to Jameel Lyons down in Philly, Dylan Gooden from Good Counsel. I mean, like I said, I've got 30 scholarship guys confirmed for this, so we can go all day.
And there will be more, that's for sure. bwi.rivals.com. Join us there for all the latest news, notes, and analysis you need on Penn State football and Penn State recruiting. Ryan, we're getting toward the end of this show. Obviously, a jam-packed episode once again. Let's hit on some final thoughts here. Anything standing out to you, either about the national recruiting scene or just visits being back in general for games after 2 weeks? Anything catch your eye, either in the Penn State recruiting universe or the college football recruiting universe after 2 weeks of games?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me think here. This is high school related, but Denied Dennis Sutton's back from injury, which is good. He put out some highlights. Check those out then. He only played in a half because of his injury. They were trying to limit his time, and he should play a full game this upcoming weekend for the first time against St. Mary's. I believe it was 4 tackles for loss and 6 tackles and a half, which is pretty good. They haven't played. Yeah, they haven't played defensive tackle, which they need him there. I understand it. I love their head coach, Akeem Saleh. He's a great guy, so I get it. But I'd love to just kind of see him rush off the edge at some point too. So I'm still planning to see that McDonough-LaSalle game in a couple weeks. Of course, watching him play Abdul Carter will be a lot of fun. But man, this is the week. This is the one that we've had circled really since last year when we knew there would be no fans in attendance. So I'm just looking forward to it. It should be a fun time. I hope Penn State fans get out early, enjoy it, go to College game day, have some fun. You guys, you deserve it, man. You missed out on this last year. I think even I might go tailgate a little bit. No, I'm not going to party, or I'm not going to drink before the game. We're going to have a late night, but I'm looking forward to maybe going out there and seeing some friends and family. It'll be a good time.
The crowd will be ready, so will we. bwi.rivals.com. It's been another edition of the Blue White Illustrated Penn State Football and Recruiting Podcast. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. We will catch you next week. And until then, be sure you like, rate, subscribe, leave us your feedback, whether it's on youtube.com/Blue White Illustrated or wherever you find your audio, you'll find us. We'll see you next time.